Hello and welcome to Dev Radio. I am back with Bill, and today we're talking about how to build an app with OpenAI and Blazor. And
Yes.
thanks for
Yeah.
showing us.
Yeah. And good to see you again, Matt. And yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm back again. So there's another one, basically the same demo we're doing here, but doing it in .NET MAUI instead, if you're interested in cross-app development and cross-platform app development.
Yeah. But Blazor is more for the browser.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So I have a kind of a personal story when it comes to Blazor, going back a few years. So around the time when Silverlight came out,
Okay. We'll talk about Silverlight.
Long. Still hurts my heart that Silverlight's gone.
Yeah.
But so back in those days, back in Silverlight 1, it was all JavaScript.
Yeah.
And it was Silverlight 2 where they added support for .NET, but they had JavaScript in there to start. And so I was working with Silverlight for my job, and I was a .NET developer. And I had also, my background was in VB3 to start with, and so on. So when it came to actually dealing with JavaScript, I mean, this was before we had all these nice libraries to make things easier and everything else. We barely had jQuery at the time. So I had a real struggle when it came to working in JavaScript. I think, first of all, because it looks like other languages that I know, like C# and Java, but it doesn't behave like them. And I think that was part of the issue with it. But at the time, I was like, wouldn't it be nice if there was a option besides JavaScript in the browser to do your code behind? To do your logic that interacts with the DOM. What if there was something else? At the time, I was thinking maybe Ruby or something like that. But now we're there with Blazor, because we can run C# in the browser, and that's what Blazor's all about. So instead of writing a bunch of JavaScript code, you're writing C# code. It's going to be testable. You can there's different flavors of Blazor where you can run it either on the server or you can run it WebAssembly in the client. And then you can also run it inside another application. So you can run it inside WPF, WinForms, MAUI. There's a lot of options when it comes to reusing Blazor. And if you want to target cross-platform apps, that Windows desktop, and then also browser, it's a great option because you can share most of your code.
Yeah, it's made things a lot easier. It was exciting when it released.
Yeah. So let's start going through the demo. So I'm going to follow all the code that I'm going to go through here. It's available online, and there'll be a link in the description for that. And I'm going to just go through the script that I put together, so you can do exactly the same thing I'm doing here and easily get this going. And it shouldn't take too long to go through this.
Great.
All right. So this is our link. And I also want to point out that this was, here, it was inspired by Alvin Ashcraft's sample that he created for Microsoft Learning. And so I based what I did in the MAUI. So I based what I did for the MAUI presentation we did on his sample, and then I ported it over to Blazor. So definitely, shout out to Alvin on that, and go out, check his sample. He used an earlier ChatGPT library because the one we're going to use wasn't available yet. But you can go out there and also experience what a different API would look like. So anyway, definite shout out to him. He made this a lot easier. So what we want to do, first of all, so if we're going to create a Blazor app, we need this workload, the ASP.NET and web development workload. If that's installed, then we're going to be able to create Blazor apps. It's going to create the templates we need and so on. So let's get into actually creating this. We'll create a new project. I want to use the same name here because I have code that depends on it that we're going to copy and paste later. And we're going to create a Blazor WebAssembly app. So a WebAssembly app is going to be all the .NET code is going to run in the browser. If you were to create a Blazor server app, then the .NET code would execute on the server, and it would use SignalR to communicate back and forth to actually provide the interactivity with your screens. So we'll do this, and we're going to call it name that I wanted. And we'll pick .NET 7. You can pick .NET 8 when it's available. And there's a lot of performance improvements in .NET 8, so it's definitely a good upgrade. So go ahead and create the app. Now, the first thing we need is we need a way to provide the OpenAI key. So we're going to use OpenAI, and this will work. The library we're going to use will work against either OpenAI.com, or it'll work against Azure OpenAI or any other OpenAI instance. For those, you'll have to provide an endpoint. But if you don't provide an endpoint, it's going to go right against OpenAI.com. So here's our Blazor project, and we have a www root folder, and this has an index.html that's going to host everything for our application. Let's go ahead and just see what the basic template looks like. Okay, so here we have we're going to have a screen with a few options, different pages in Blazor. Once it comes up.
Hello world.
So we have hello world, homepage. We have a counter we can click on. We have we can fetch some data, and this is actually a really nice template if you're looking to get into Blazor. Just creating the basic app and looking through what it does. It goes through event handling, data binding, calling services. There's a lot in there, so it's a pretty good sample. Well, we're going to modify this, and we're going to put some OpenAI stuff into the homepage. All right. So the first thing we need is we need the OpenAI key, and these are secret. And this is one thing I want to stress is that you do not want to do what I'm doing right here in your production application. So what we want is we want a configuration file here that has the OpenAI key, and then if you have an OpenAI endpoint, such as if you have your own Azure OpenAI instance, then you could put the endpoint here. And so we're going to be putting this in an app settings.json file, but you don't want to do this in production. You'd want to protect your keys. If you're doing WebAssembly, then you want to probably do an API call to a server that gives you back the key and then store it securely. If you're doing Blazor server, then you could actually have the key just in your application because it's not getting shared to the client side. But since we're doing WebAssembly, you would want to protect this. Okay, so we would have an app.json here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in mine, and we'll see if I can do this without exposing it like I did in the last presentation I did.
Should I turn off the screen share for a second?
No. I think I got this. And if not, like I'll revoke it like I did last time, which is fine. Yeah. Okay, so this is my app.json. So where you want this to go in Blazor is you want to put in www root. And then once you do that, it's automatically accessible to Blazor. So like I said, we would not want to do this in production. You could keep the endpoint there, but you wouldn't want to keep the secret key there. Okay, so next we want to install the NuGet package for it's going to be azure.ai. Okay. Okay. So one thing about this, this is in pre-release right now. Azure.ai.openai is in preview. It's in beta, and they just released a new beta yesterday, it looks like. And so it's in beta, so there are things in changing. The API signature has changed. So, and that was fine. I was going to update the demo for this, but there's also some behavior changes where it looks like there's a bug in beta 9. So I'm going to pick beta 8 for now. I will update the sample on GitHub if I find a viable option. Whenever it gets fixed or whenever we get to release, I'll update it. But for now, let's pick beta 8. And now we can go. And our index.razor, well, okay, first of all, for our initialization, we're going to go to program.cs. And what we're going to do, well, okay, first of all, we need a service. So let's add that first. So this is a service that's going to go out to OpenAI and query and send a prompt and get results back. So let's add that in here. So we'll go back to the sample and we'll get the code for that. And it's going to be called OpenAI service. Oops, I spelled it right. And I'm going to replace it from what was in the sample. So what we have here is we have an initialize method where you can specify the key that it's going to use for the OpenAI calls, and optionally an OpenAI endpoint if you're going against Azure OpenAI or something other than OpenAI.com. And then we have a couple methods here. We have one that's calling into OpenAI using a non-conversational model, which is a DaVinci model here. And this is going to give us a response back in text. And but we don't have a conversation going here. We don't have a chat. It's not a chat protocol. It's a non-conversational protocol. You can build up the prompt so that you can put in information and call back into it. But if we're going to use GPT-3.5 Turbo 16K model, then we would need to use the chat interface for that. And so here we're just creating a new chat message, and we're creating a new conversation every time. If we wanted to store off the chat messages as we're going through the conversation, we could store off what we provided and also what came back from OpenAI. And then we can pass back that conversation into our later calls. The thing that you have to know about OpenAI is that there's no state stored for you. Anytime you want state, you got to actually pass that back in when you do the next call. So we have those couple of different options here, and we'll see the difference of those. And what we're going to do is we're going to have this application is going to be able to recommend hotels, restaurants, or attractions in a certain city. So this is the prompt that gets generated. Our prompt is just some English that we can pass into OpenAI. And then we generate that prompt based on the recommendation type that we're getting and the location that we're at. So let's go ahead and build this. and make sure that there's no errors yet. All right, so that's good so far. So now let's initialize this service. So let's register it when the app starts up. So we'll go into program.cs. This is what runs when the app starts. And we'll go in and go back to our sample here and grab the code for the next part. And we're going to replace this run async here with code that news up the OpenAI service, registers it. Then we'd have to do a build. So to grab the configuration that we put in app settings.json, we have to do a builder.build first here before we can get to the configuration. Then we can grab the keys and then we can initialize the service. So by the time this ends, we have our OpenAI service ready to go with the key and the endpoint initialized. Okay, so let's build this again just to make sure everything's cool. All right, looks good. So now let's use this on the page. So we'll go into the sample again. And we're going to replace our index.razor with this. So this is Razor syntax, and this is what Blazor uses to create pages. And this lets you mix your C# code with your HTML. And you can build components in it and things like that as well. So we'll copy this, and we're going to paste that into our index.razor. So we're going to replace the hello world with this new page. And what this has is it injects the OpenAI service, so we can call into that. So this is, we registered in program.cs, and so we can get to it here. And then we just have a form that we're doing some validation on. We have a required city. We have a required recommendation type as a dropdown. And then we have a submit button. Then behind that, we have some code behind. So we don't have any JavaScript going on here. We're just doing straight .NET. And we're calling into our OpenAI service. And we say, we notify the user that they're working on it. And then once it's done, in order for the UI to update, we have to call status change, and that's what that's for. So, and then the recommendation, we have these required fields, and that's how we do validation in Blazor. So let's go ahead and run this. All right, so we have local AI recommendations. And like I told Matt last time, I'm a foodie, so I like to search for restaurants. And I live in Tampa, so we'll see what it comes back with. So the refinery, that's a really nice recommendation. Good restaurant, kind of gastropub. They change their menu all the time. Let's try another one. Oxford Exchange, yes, another good recommendation. So we could pick attractions. I'll probably pick Busch Gardens, I would think. I don't know. We'll see. Yep. So that's using the Da Vinci model. So if we go back to OpenAI service, and we have the call OpenAI, and that's what we're calling here, and that's using Da Vinci. But let's go ahead and we'll use the GPT-3.5 model. That requires a chat interface where you pass a conversation back and forth. And like I said earlier, we are just starting a new conversation every time right now. So let's see how that would work. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to call that other method. That's in the same stuff, and then it's going to call into 3.5. I wonder, Matt, if it's going to give us the same response it gave last time. I mean, one thing to note is every time you do this, it's going to give you a different answer. So. Now, one thing to note here is that it's taking longer. Oh, Burn Steakhouse, that's a great one. Burn Steakhouse, one of the best steakhouses in America. And then it also mentions Eulalie, which is what came up last time.
Yeah.
So,
I'm learning about Tampa. I've got to visit.
Yeah, well, there's some great places. I mean, we can definitely recommend some good places to go based on what's here. So, so the 3.5 model, like we saw, is, takes a significantly longer to get a response from. And then also, if you have access to, ChatGPT-4, you can use that with this API as well. And this is the package that we're using here is the official package for Microsoft for accessing OpenAI. They call it azure.ai.openai, but it works against any OpenAI instance. So, so that's really nice because a lot of people don't have access to Azure OpenAI yet. So you can get going and start with this. One thing I would say at this point is that, so we've demonstrated kind of the way to access this and get going with it. Really, when it comes down to it, then it's just based on you building your prompts properly, building your requests properly to go to OpenAI, and that's really where most of your work's going to be.
Yeah.
So that's what I've got for today, Matt, and I think it went pretty well.
Yeah, it all worked as expected, and we did it fast. It was 20 minutes, and you had an app up and going with OpenAI. That was great.
Yeah.
Well, I'll get the links to both the previous video and the repo in the description, and
okay.
You can update it when it's ready, or maybe one of our viewers will do a pull request.
Yeah, I'd love that. Yeah, definitely contribute. And provide feedback as well on GitHub repo or on this video.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Okay, great.